Let's kick off here with the fact that you have 15 million visitors expected to be in Paris during the games. Obviously, Airbnb has a big presence there as well. What approximately would you expect the impact on your third quarter revenues to be from this event?
Well, I mean, the first thing I'll just say is this is the biggest single hosting event in the history of Airbnb. We have the number of people staying in Airbnb here in Paris to fill the Olympic Stadium 5 times over. And they're spending over $1 billion when they're here in Paris. So we're seeing really good demand this summer. I think Q3 is going to be quite strong. And I think this event, the Olympics, is just the ultimate demonstration of the power of Airbnb. Because these hundreds of thousands of people, many of them wouldn't have been able to come here and certainly wouldn't have been able to afford to stay here had it not been for the 150,000 homes we have here in Paris. And I should just remind everyone, Airbnb started for events because in large events, there's only so many hotels. And so either you add excess capacity or people don't come.
150,000 rooms on the market. That's about double, at least, that's what we have usually in Paris for Airbnb. Do you think hosts are actually gaining from this? Because a year ago, I remember all my friends saying, I'm going to put my flat on Airbnb during the Olympics and make huge money. But it seems like the rates are not that high, not as high as expected.
Well, the average host here in Paris is making about $2,200 on Airbnb during the Olympics. So that is obviously very, very meaningful income for them. Many of them are first-time hosts, so 40% more listings we have today than the beginning of the year. So this is very, I think, meaningful income for people. But I'm also proud that the rates are somewhat moderated. You know, we really wanted to make sure, we worked with the IOC, and one of the big concerns they had was that the Olympic Games would become unaffordable. So I think the flip side of that is I think the games are much more affordable for people than they would have been otherwise.
Because especially for the luxury side of things, for example, for luxury hotels, it seems like rates are down about 40% from their peak about 11 months before the games. Is that also what you've been seeing with Airbnb, perhaps lowering their rates as we approach the Olympics in order to fill the rooms and to increase the occupancy rate?
I mean, we had a lot of bookings many, many months ago. And so we've continued to see bookings. I mean, the thing that's really interesting, we have a really long lead time bookings, but we're still getting like thousands of people booking every single day last minute, even during the games for the coming days. So I think the demand has been very, very solid on Airbnb.
Right here, we are in the clock room of this iconic Musée d'Orsay, which used to be a train station.
Yes.
It actually was inaugurated in 1900 for one of the last Olympics in Paris and also for the international exhibition. You're offering 2 fans to stay here tonight.
Yes.
For free.
For free.
That's part of Airbnb Icons.
Yes.
Can you tell us what it is, how you selected those 2 people who are staying here tonight?
Yeah, so icons are the most extraordinary experiences in the world from the world's biggest icons, both people and iconic places. And one of the most iconic places in the world, certainly here in Paris, is this museum. As you said, it was a clock tower that became a museum. The ultimate in, I think, like creativity. To get to this room, I had to walk through a room of Van Goghs and Renoirs and Monets. And behind me is this clock tower, and millions of people or thousands of people take photos of this clock tower, and we thought, what if you could stay here? And so we got the designer of the Olympic torch, which is right next to me, and he designed this room and every single object in this room. And we picked a couple. It was a totally free stay, so you can imagine when something like this is free, it's a truly once-in-a-lifetime experience. Thousands of people apply. We looked through all the applications. We picked 2 lucky winners, a couple from California, and they're going to stay here tonight. And by the way, I just one other thing else to say is, when behind me is this clock tower. If you look down, that's the Seine where the opening games are. If you go into the terrace, you will have quite literally probably the best seat in the house for the opening games just in a few hours.
The opening ceremony, which is actually taking place in 3 hours.
3 hours, yes.
We're going to be here from the Musée d'Orsay. As part of these Airbnb Icons, obviously, this is only a couple staying here, but this is a whole thing you launched in May. You got the Barbie Dream House, you got the Prince Mansion. What's the strategy here in terms of gaining some new sign-ups for Airbnb at a time perhaps when your growth is a little slowing down?
Well, I think that the growth, first of all, is very, very strong, and I expect a huge amount of growth in the coming years to come. But let me just start with Icons. We think Icons initially is a great way to keep Airbnb top of mind, reach new audiences, and also let people know that Airbnb is much more than a place to stay. It's about an experience. And ultimately, where we're going as a company is Airbnb is going to be much more than just about accommodations. I think the ultimate Airbnbs are experiences, and we're going much deeper into experiences. So right now, these are more promotions, but one of the things we want to do is figure out how can we take the magic of Icons and bring it to millions of people. And I hope this magic that you feel in this room is something that people will be able to experience around the world.
Obviously, there's been some resistance in some other places about Airbnb, for example, Barcelona in Europe recently, where we saw some protests. There's also discussions about perhaps banning Airbnb altogether from 2029 for at least some of those apartments in Barcelona. What's your reaction to this?
My reaction is that we ultimately want to make cities stronger. You know, I think we provide economic impact. The vast majority of hosts in Airbnb are regular people making supplemental income. The city becomes more accessible people. We try to make sure people are distributed throughout different neighborhoods. But ultimately, we want to be wanted in a city. We're in 100,000 cities and towns all over the world. And so cities have a right to choose how they want Airbnb to exist in their market. I think throughout these 100,000 communities, you see that the cities that embrace Airbnb, I think, thrive the most. And the cities that don't embrace Airbnb, like New York, which Airbnb is no longer in for a short-term basis, housing prices are not down, but hotel prices are up. So I think we've run this experiment. And I think the cities like Paris that embrace Airbnb are the ones that thrive the most.
Airbnb has taken a diplomatic approach to regulation, New York City being an exception, as you just mentioned. And you recently invested more resources into access to or British access to home ownership. Is that some kind of a mission that Airbnb is pricing out some people out of certain neighborhoods?
I think it's so complicated. It really, I hate to make a generalization. I started Airbnb with my co-founder because one weekend we couldn't afford to pay rent. Millions of hosts, we have 5 million hosts on Airbnb. So many of them tell us that they use the money on Airbnb to be able to pay their rent, to be able to pay their mortgage. That being said, I don't want to be one of those tech founders that just defends the business and says everything we do is good all the time. If you build a platform and hundreds of millions of people use your platform, it's going to be used for unintended consequences. For most of our platforms, most of us believe the vast majority of things happening is good. But if we believe everything is good, then we're being naive. But at the same point, it's important that people understand the majority of people are regular people renting their home they live in or their second home, and they're hosting guests from around the world, many of which would have never been able to travel and stay in that city. Ultimately, I think that's a very important thing for the world.
And Brian, before we let you go, we have to ask about U.S. politics because, of course, we're 3.5 months away from the November election. We've seen a lot of tech founders in particular come out in support of the Republican Party. And I'm wondering, from where you stand, have you thrown your support behind either candidate at this point?
No, I've not, and I'm certainly not going to wade into that this time. You know, I think it's really important for me to focus the narrative and our attention of Airbnb on what we can do for hundreds of thousands of people in Paris, and that's what I'm focused on.